Let's take a look at Algebra 2B Project 6. This is the part of the project that corresponds with day 1, I believe lesson 26. So let's take a look. We're continuing with our theme about the kingdom and the castle and Polly and Digit and Gormondo. So carrying over from ideas from our previous projects. Now we're diving more into statistics. So a little bit of context here before we dive in. We're told that the Grand Wizard is going to cast a spell of protection and asks Polly and Digit to find the heights of all of the people and other creatures in the kingdom, big and small. And so they randomly survey 300 creatures. This gives them an approximate confidence level of 95% with a margin of error of 5.5%, etc. And so it goes on, and we are looking at the survey where Polly has gone to the northern districts and surveyed 150 creatures, while Digit went to the southern districts and surveyed 150 creatures on their height. Okay, and that whole thing is written in your project, so if you want to reread that and kind of get into the story a little bit more, you can go ahead and read that. But what that brings us to is our first question, which is a frequency chart of Polly's data, again from the northern districts, and it gives us the height of people and creatures measured in feet. So notice in these two columns, and these columns are separate, right? So you could have represented this table just as one continuous chart, but it's representing like this just to save space. So we have height starting at 0.5. It doesn't look like they gave us the unit, so let's just say 0.5, and then it goes up in increments of 0.5 all the way to 10. And then frequency. So this means one of the people or creatures that Polly surveyed had this height, right? This means 0 people had a height of 2. Looking over here, this one means that 33 people or creatures at a height of 5.5, and so on. So again, frequency is just telling you how many people out of 150 that Polly found with that height. Okay, so again, a frequency table. Now, you are asked to find the mean height, the sample standard deviation, and the median. And in order to do that, I really recommend that you open up the one variable statistics tool, and that is linked for you in the project. And in fact, I'm going to pull mine up right now. So this is the exact tool. I just loaded it. You guys are probably kind of familiar with the way the tools work by now. You know, they're a little bit sometimes slow to load. They're very simply built. They're very nice because they are made specifically for this class, so they get you the exact kind of information that you need without overloading you with a bunch of garbage, basically. So if I wanted to figure out the mean height, the sample standard deviation, and the median, I would just have to plug in my data into this table. So for example, the data in this case being the heights, I would start here and I would say, okay, my height is 0.5, and I can just hit enter and it populates 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, and so on, right? And I would go all the way through the table up to 10. Then you could go in and enter your frequencies. One thing I'll warn you is that I found this a little cumbersome as far as like clicking and navigating over to different boxes. I found that using the mouse is kind of inconvenient, and so far it seems easiest to navigate using arrow keys to move up, down, left, and right. So for frequency, you would do the same thing. I see that 0.5 is a frequency of 1, the next one's 1, the next couple, these are all zeros, right, and so on. So I have done part of this table. I've done it up to 3.5, right? So you're just going to fill in this table the rest of the way with the remaining pieces of information. Notice that as I was entering things in, for example, let's take a look at this thing is being stubborn. Let's take a look at this. What if I notice the way the statistics and the calculation, the columns to the right are changing as I enter data. So I put in 4, and then the number that corresponds with that is 0, so I leave that as 0. But again, just notice as I enter in additional numbers, my numbers will start to change as well. the results. So you can see when I hit enter, all the calculations changed. So it's important that you get all your data in there, and then you'll just have to pick and choose the data that you need for answering the questions. So I've kind of just represented what you need here in red. The mean is going to be the number that you get as that x bar. Okay, and then sample standard deviation is our S, and median is the MED. Okay, so if once you get that table entered, it's actually pretty straightforward. You're just going to read right off the table and then match up your data to answer the questions. Going forward, it's going to be the same thing for this chart. Okay, so this is question 2. Following is a frequency chart. This time it should say, I have polys written here, but really this is, I think this is digits data. But you're asked to do the exact same thing. So you've done it for polys data, now you would do it for digits. So you'd go back to your table, and you wouldn't even have to rewrite the numbers. You could just edit it to match the frequencies. So I would have to go back. For example, looking at mine, the frequency for 0.5 is 0. The next we have 1. Oops, see how it turned it into 11, so I have to be careful of that. See if I can fix that. That should be a 1. There we go. And then I have a 0. Oops. So notice that you have to backspace. I'm accidentally adding numbers. It doesn't erase them, it just adds. So 0, 1, 0, 0, 0. This should be a 1. Next I get a 6, then a 9, then an 18, and so on, okay? So again, just go through the entire table, edit all of your frequencies so that they match this particular table, and then once again, once you have everything populated, you'll be able to, and it's cutting off our column names for some reason. There we go. You'll look under the statistics symbols just like before. The calculations will appear, and you'll be able to just match each piece. So again, for example, part A, what is the mean height? You would just look at the number that corresponds to the x bar and you would plug that in. Median corresponding to MED, and then standard deviation with our S of x. Okay, so a little bit time consuming to enter data or enter your numbers into the table, but once you have them all in there, it should be pretty easy to get your answers figured out. Next, consider the data Poly and Digit collected and explain whether you think the differences between the results of their surveys is significant or insignificant. Also explain why you think that way. Include the mean and standard deviation in your response. So for this one, I would say if you only want to focus on mean and median, or mean and standard deviation, that's totally fine. Okay. So look at between questions 1 and 2, take notice of what the mean and the standard deviation are for each of the tables, for Poly's table and Digits table, and look at the way they differ. Is it in a significant way or is it insignificant? And then just talk about whether you think that means the results are, different, or are they similar? Again, explain why you think that way. There's not a particular right answer. We're asking you to just kind of objectively look at the number measures and just kind of share your thoughts based on what you know about these terms and these numbers. Okay, so again, give us a few words comparing the mean and standard deviation of the two tables and explain why you think the results, based on those figures, why you think the results are significantly or insignificantly different. Next, Poly and Digit decide to combine their data because they believe it is not significantly different. Now again, I know that kind of ties into the question you just answered. It's okay if you did think the data was significantly different. Again, as long as you support your opinion or your thoughts with evidence and numbers to back that up, you're not going to get marked off. So, following is a table that summarizes the heights and feats and their frequencies from the 300-person survey. So, they had taken the same heights, right? So now we've combined our frequency tables. So, in essence, they really just added them together, right? So, maybe Polly had a 0 frequency for this one and Digit had 1 person frequency, so they added it together and they got 1, and they did that for each entry. The thing you need to do is calculate the one variable analysis for the data, match each statistic with its corresponding value. So you're doing the same thing here. Once again, you're going to want to pull up your one variable statistics tool. And once again, you won't have to change the data column at all. You'll just go back through and change all your frequencies. Double check everything as you go. Remember that this does not quite work the same way as like an Excel sheet does. So you'll want to double check your numbers just to make sure that you've entered them correctly, because this tool, again, just doesn't work quite the same way as Excel. Once you do that, just like before, you won't actually have to do calculation. It'll just be a matter of matching up values from that table with their corresponding symbol. And in fact, you won't have to interpret the symbols. They are written, for example, let's take a look here, like Q1 for quartile 1 is written Q3 for quartile 3, etc. So again, what I mean by that is if I'm looking at this table, you're just going to have a bunch of answer stems that have these exact symbols, and then you're going to have a bunch of stems that have the exact numbers here, and you're just going to have to match them together. So it'll take you a little bit of time, but overall you won't have to calculate anything, and I think you'll be able to complete this without too much difficulty. That's it for this part of the project. I'll catch you on the next video.